Good morning, Yasha Allah. In the precious name of our High Priest, Mashiach, Yahushai, Yahusha, and whatever name you call him, I come this Sunday morning desirous of sharing a word with you, Yasha Allah, having an understanding in my own spirit that the time is at hand and that we should be in haste about our master's business. As you might have seen, our opening scripture is from the book of Romans, 1 Corinthians chapter 14, that is. And to all who would hear, who are desirous of hearing and receiving this word, it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 14 and verse 21. In the law, it is written, so we upgrade that first line to say that in the Torah, it is written. With men of other tongues and other lips will I speak unto this people. And yet for all that will they not hear me, saith Yahweh. All right, there's your opening line. And I trust that you are brought to a moment of silence over this declaration of the scripture that what it says is evidence or evident in the history of the 12 tribes, that we have been a rebellious people. And for our rebellion and our hatred of each other, we've suffered captivity after captivity, and then some more captivity. Until the prophet Jeremiah has asked the question, is Yasha Allah really a servant? Is he born to be a slave? Because of the repeated captivity that we have been serving, rebelling against the Most High. And what is so grievous about it is that we have been rebelling against the Most High to serve the very one that has begun to destroy us and our heritage from the very beginning of Satan's entrance into the human family with Adam and Hawa. And yes, of course, from that time until now, we've been hard put to keep ourselves out of the hands, the control, and brutal mishandling of the evil one. Of course, we found along the way that with the development of nations, he was quite busy, as you would find in reading the scriptures, beginning right at the beginning in Bereshit. You find him busy corrupting nations. Once he had gotten into the human family by the disobedience of our first mother, and of course, our first father following behind her, trying to save something he couldn't save. The result of the error, the rebellion, the result of the rebellion in the garden has resulted in us having to be living our lives in a world, in such a world as we find ourselves living in, under captivity unto the brute beast that has accumulated to himself some human agencies and has made life very, very miserable for those who have, after the fall, there be those that have made great efforts striving to please the Most High and to do His will. We who are here today are a part of the gathering, might I say, of those who have voiced the desire and intention to hear the Most High and to do His bidding. Wherefore, according to the scriptures, the Most High Yahweh instituted a plan of salvation set up in the nation of the 12 tribes that we call Yasha'Allah. I'm wary of using the word Yisrael because of the one tribe in the land that is the set apart land, the one tribe that under the command of Satan is dominating the land. One tribe claiming to be 12. That's causing all our problems. I mean, the problem of captivity and war and, all kinds of brutality. But it's to us now, we've come to this stage, this time in the theatrics of the game, if I might say. But this is no game. Serious matters. We have come to the time of the sealing of the 12 tribes. Serious times. And my duty is to encourage those who are following the course of history. I'm speaking of history, real history, according to biblical declarations and prophetic revelation that teaches, shows us exactly how the world turns. I mean, how people are living their lives in this world that have become a habitation of captive citizens, humans who have become captive to an outsider, to outsiders in the form of Gadriel, according to the book of Enoch or Hanok. That Gadriel, that fallen beast, and those who fell along with him have done a massive work of destruction in the midst of the creation of the Most High. I'm speaking with regards to humanity, the creation of man himself. And so we are thankful. There are those of us who are very thankful. Very humbled by this fact of the grace of Yahweh, the Most High, having put in or made provision for a plan of redemption to redeem the fallen of humanity, the fallen of the children of Adam and Hawa, his wife. So in accordance with that, as we were saying, we are in the time of the end called the sealing time. And we want to build on the knowledge, understanding of where we are, what is our engagement in the process of history and prophecy, and our place as the 12 tribes in all of this. We're shown from the book of Esdras, concerning the former captivity under the Babylonians. So there were a series of rulers that had authority over Yasha'Allah in those times, beginning with King Nebuchadnezzar. You remember that? You remember Shadrach, Meshach, and the bad Negro, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah? And then you remember Daniel in the lion's den, on and on. So I call you to recognize that in the books that are included with those going on from Jeremiah, who prophesied the 70-year captivity under Babylon. This means the king himself, Nebuchadnezzar, who built the great image, that he had the gall to command 12 tribes. Well, pardon me, the house of Yahweh to bow down, worship an image with the mighty Elohim as our Father, live, existing, and fully representing himself in his face. Nebuchadnezzar set up the image to be worshipped and was stopped in his tracks. And we have so many stories like it. The main point is that in this captivity and Babylon and successive rulership in this captivity that led into the Grecian Philip of Macedon and Alexander, the children of Edom, who came into their prominence as was prefigured in Bereshith chapter 25 with the granting of Edom to have a portion of the birthright. And he capitalized on what was granted to him, even though he had thrown it away, he cast it away. But because of the grant unto Edom, to Esau, the Grecians came into prominence. It was like a backdoor operation. With the death of Alexander, you had his generals, taking over the rulership and direction, guidance of the nation, and going into Mizraim, to Egypt. They learned what Satan needed for them to learn, so that they came back after their Egyptian tutoring and implemented the siege of Jerusalem under Pilate and Herod. We're not going to go into an exhaustive historical lesson right now. It's only a backdrop, kind of bring you up to date where we are. We are in a time called the sealing time. I want to show you basically what was happening at the time of the Babylonian captivity with our people of the household of Howdah, the three tribes, of which one tribe was committed. Well, I back up a little bit. One tribe was partially committed to Satan. That tribe was called the Levites. And so from the time of the offering of the strange fire of Levi, the strange fire was the intrusion of Satan into the sacrificial offerings set up by the Most High. Satan asked the Levites to let him put the fire to participate in the offerings unto the Most High. And the Most High slew them. I'm not going to go there to the story right now. I think you have some understanding of what I mean. Let's see. The story is in Shemoth, Exodus. I believe it is in Exodus, between Exodus and Waikwa or Numbers. You have the story of the offering of the strange fire when Satan exposed himself to the Levites, whom he was courting a relationship with Levi from an Mitzrayim, from an Egypt. All right. So in the time of the offering of the strange fire by Nadab and Abihu, Levi had already made the attempt to transition himself into the works of Satan. And Nadab and Abihu were, I don't know if I have a word for it. I can imagine. My imagination leads me to consider the vengeance of the fire that destroyed Nadab and Abihu, Levites, because they thought to invite Satan into the sacrificial offerings of the Most High. And of course, you follow that incident and the ways of the Levites, and until now, you see that how they were going astray and how they were allowing Satan to infiltrate them as one tribe, particularly given priesthood orders. But they were courting Satan to destroy the work of the Mashiach even before he came. And so in the time of the Babylonian captivity was set up the principle of what's the word I need? the word I need has to do with infiltration and espionage. These secret doings and workings of one nation in seeking to overthrow another nation or to uh, usurp the goods of another nation, such like. So the Levites were a backdoor operation that Satan was allowed to use. And this was part of the trial of the house of Judah or Yahweh in Babylon. Levi was causing all the trouble. But we find that during the Babylonian captivity, there was a particular problem that surfaced, and we can look at it in First Esdras chapter 8. First Ezra chapter 8, I think that is, and around at verse 65. Let's read a few verses down to get an idea of what we want to discuss here. Moreover, they that were come out of the captivity offered sacrifices unto Yahweh Elohim of Yasha'ah. This is the time of the Babylonian captivity, under whose shadow Philip of Macedon, his son, that is, Alexander's 4 generals, in the backdrop, in the shadow of the Babylonian captivity and the Babylonian kings, the Grecians rose up and had their generals go into Mitzrayim, to Egypt, to begin to learn the wisdom of Egypt and the power of Egypt's authority, that they patterned themselves after. Hence, we have all the way up into the book of Revelation, we have the showing forth of ties with Babylon and Egypt, Mitzrayim, because these two nations figured prominently in the captivity of the 12 tribes. And with particular reference to the house of Yahweh, that's called Judah, because Judah or Yahweh was the leader, the leading tribes. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. And so it is easy to imagine and to accept the view, the factual view, that Satan, Gabriel, and his boys were concentrating their efforts at the leader. What they say, if you bring the head down, the whole body will fall with it. This was the strategy. And so in the Babylonian captivity, you have in First Ezra chapter 8. Let's read a few verses from verse 65. From verse 65 of First Ezra chapter 8. Let's read from verse 65. Moreover, they that were come out of the captivity, the Babylonian captivity, offered sacrifice unto the Elohim of Yasha'Allah, even 12 bullocks for all Yasha'Allah, 16 rams, 12 lambs, goats for the peace offerings, 12. All of them a sacrifice to the Most High. And they delivered the king's commandments unto the king's stewards. And so the governors, pardon me, let me state verse 67. And they delivered the king's commandment unto the king's stewards. And they honored the people and the temple of Elohim. My stomach gets sick when I see what Esau has done to these scriptures and put these demonic naming of our forefathers. So I left it out because it makes my stomach very sick to see. And verse 68. Now when these things were done, the rulers came unto me and said, the nation of Yasha'Allah, the princes, the priests, and the Levites have not put away from them the strange people of the land. Check. Nor the pollutions of the Gentiles. That is, of the Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites, Moabites, Egyptian, Mitzrayim, that is, and Edomites. And isn't these among the names that are shown to us in Psalm chapter 83? Of those chief among the destroyers of the household of Yasha'Allah in total, and with particular emphasis on the tribe of Yahweh. So here we have them listed to some degree. For both they and their sons have married with their daughters. That is the nation of Yasha'Allah. And Yahweh married the sons and daughters of the captors and the destroyers of our people. And the holy seed, the set apart seed, is mixed with the strange people of the land. And from the beginning of this matter, the rulers and the great men have been partakers in this iniquity. And so we have a precedent set here. Well, of course, we will find that this marrying the nations, intermixing with the nations, is a problem that the Most High had with Yasha Allah near the beginning of his releasing Yasha Allah from captivity under the nations. And we have, well, of course, let me back up a little bit. The Most High had used a certain number of the nations, for instance, Mizraim. You know, our fathers were in Mizraim, and they married daughters of Mizraim, the Egyptians, had children and raised up a family tradition out of marrying the Egyptians. The Heavenly Father allowed it. Our forefather Joseph married the priest's daughter and had Ephraim and Manasseh, and so on. So a part of the process of building the nation was a certain amount of intermarriage with others of the nation, for instance, of Mizraim, Egypt, to build up the nation. So the Father allowed it. It's his world, and the children of Abraham were his heritage. So he's allowed to do what he wishes to do, to build the nation as he would have it, and to implement his laws, statutes, and commandments to govern the nation. And this was part of his purpose, because as we look at the scriptures further, we find that from one flesh and blood, that is Adam and his wife, one flesh and blood, all the nations were made. Okay, so but when that certain time came where the people, that portion of the people making up the 12 tribes, to the point where the Most High wanted it to be, he positioned a cutoff point, a cutoff point to exit, to have his people exit from relationship with the other nations and be separate unto him, and to forsake the ways that they would have learned from their forefathers. I mean the children, things that they would have learned from the side of their parentage that was from, say, the Egyptian nation. Then, of course, whatever nation it became, for the children of Yasha Allah did not stop at mixing with the Egyptian. You know the story. They were mixing with the Edomites, who were their born destroyers, and so on. So we had this interbreeding, intermixing that was going on, and the Most High wanted it to be checked and put away, that he could manage his people from that point where they multiplied, though having been mixed. I mean, having children, the men having children with the women of the other nations. um, their wives and the children were brought into the covenant of the 12 tribes and therefore were to leave off their relationships that their women came out of. The 12 tribes, headship of men were out of Yaakov. You need to get it clear. The marriages that were with Egyptian women or whoever other women, those that were accepted of the Most High, um, did not muddy the bloodline. It was from the 12 sons of Yaakov, who were grandchildren or great grandchildren of Abraham. This is how it went. And so we find that Satan was busy trying to see if he could cross that bloodline and have his seed, bring his way of life into the nation. That is why he had Nadab and Abihu offer his fire for the sacrifice, and Most High killed them. That's the reason. And so we have had this problem leaving the 70 years captivity of Babylon, going back to the homeland. I have a view in my own mind and spirit that it must have been a real time of praise and a time of thanksgiving and a time of power to be in the same place as all those brothers of the house of Yahweh, all those prophets. I mean, the host of prophets that were there. If you get to work at making a compilation of the prophets that were there in the 70 years captivity, it blow you away. But of course, Esau has, tampered the scriptures so that you don't see that. You don't see how powerful the 70-year captivity was and how powerfully infected was the 70-year captivity was with the actions of the prophets of Yasha in those times, because Esau tried to hide that in his tearing up the scriptures. But that was a time of great activity of the Most High among his people. And everything was moving on towards returning back to Jerusalem, and of course, to set up for the principal character of the covenant that was made and ratified with Abraham through his seed, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, into the 12 tribes. out of whom was born Mashiach. Out of the captivity, the 70-year captivity, we have the house of Yahweh to come back together and to revive Jerusalem to some degree, eh? And this was to facilitate the birth of the Mashiach. In the days of Herod the king. Near the time of the rulership of Pilate. This is how this history was measured out for your understanding, for your clear-cut understanding of Bible and history. We're looking at the sealing time. In the days of the Babylonian captivity, remember, we saw a sealing time described by Hezekiah or Ezekiel, for Hezekiel was a part of the 70 years captivity. These are things that you can now begin to put together to get a clearer picture, understanding of the 70 years captivity that Jeremiah prophesied. So all those great prophets were in the 70-year captivity. And with the coming to a close of that captivity and returning to the land of Yasha'Allah, we're now going full steam ahead into the birth of the Mashiach, as we see in the book of Matityahu and the books that Esau calls the four Gospels, that talks about the birth of the Mashiach. The same covenant promise that was made unto Abraham, fulfilled in Jacob, because Esau wanted nothing to do with it. And so the Most High blessed Jacob with it. And there we have the birth of the Mashiach in Jerusalem, in the days of Herod the king. And of course, transitioning into Pilate, I guess we might say the royal rulership of Rome, dominating the house of Yahweh in those days of Herod the king, Edom. And so the Babylonian captivity was a time of rich prophetic activity, if you didn't know. For the way the scriptures have been put together, that is to hide the power of the Most High and his doings, his dealings with Yasha'Allah in those times. And where we are now, we are coming after having been set free of the Babylonian captivity, that rich experience that had all those great prophets. You see the few that are portrayed, you know. I mean, we have, we can name them: Hezekiel, uh, Daniel, Joel, Amos. The few that we can name right from the top of our heads. These were only a few. But when we go into for instance, the Apocrypha and other books, all those prophets that we see mentioned were in the 7th year Babylonian captivity. Suffice it to say then that when the captivity was over and they were set free to go back, the house of Yahweh, they set free to go back, they discovered that there was a problem with the men. And I'm not sure how to fix it at the moment. The men, in fact, were marrying strange women. It is stated explicitly in the books of Ezra's that we're dealing with here a little bit, and what's his name? What's the governor name? His name was Nehemiah. In these two books, or set of books, in particular, we see the problem with the intermarrying of the nations, or Yasha'Allah, the man of Yasha'Allah, intermarrying with the nations. And the seed that was already set apart, after a certain amount of intermixing, the Most High wanted that stopped so that he could concentrate on what he had accumulated, how he had built the nation from the time of Egypt, Mitzrayim. He wanted them to quit mixing with the nations and concentrate on their building of families within that grouping that he had already established, and let that be solely the 12 tribes. But because of the men not holding their own and safeguarding their authority and keeping out the influences of Gadriel and all the evil ones. And of course, the women were the official undercurrent of satanic activity, because this is where the women understood that they were receiving power from to oppose the man's authority and rule. It was getting this from Satan. This is why they were so willing to trade off their relationship with the Most High to get this vibe of frustrating the marriage relationship with the men. Because with Satan, they were offered privilege to rebel and not be subject to the men's authority. And with the men losing their grip on relationship with Abaya, well, the floodgates were open. And so Satan, with all the demonic forces and the kingdoms that were set up by Satan, Edom, and all the others, according to Psalm chapter 83. And the one that was hidden from our view, Levi, that set up his opposition to the Mashiach in the 400 years captivity that we now have come out of. This was the time that Satan picked his hiding space to hide himself and to do his utmost damage to the tribes. In the 400 years captivity, Satan and Edom were playing for all the marbles. If you didn't see it before, now you can get a glimpse, you can get a view, a full panoramic view of Satan's work with the Edomites, the children of the Grecians that went down into Mitzrayim with the Ptolemies and learned all the ways of the Egyptians in terms of their enslavement strategies, how they conducted, how they brutalized Yasha'Allah. They learned all of that. And then when they came back, and Herod and Pilate, they set up the brutalization of the house of Yehoiada. Well, they were already dealing with Ephraim and those in the South American regions. But they came to desecrate and destroy the house of Yehoiada. This was Edom in his finest hour to honor his commitment of his rejection of the covenant. Finest hour. And what I then need to show you, explain to you, that in the 400-year captivity, Satan and Esau and the one that was hidden, Levi, were playing for all the marbles. I grant you, give you to understand that the brutality that was put upon all the tribes, and including the house of Yehoiada, was a tremendous feat. The infliction of pain and torture and breakings and burnings and beatings was of such magnitude. There was no way to describe it, really. And that is why Daniel 8 and 14 kicks in to show the 2300-day prophecy of the tribunal that had to be set in heaven to view, to take a view of the tremendous suffering of the tribes under Satan and Edom and Levi, the catch that was put in by Satan secretly, that was hidden from view, to secure the homage of the 12 tribes in general and the house of Yahweh in particular. This is where Edom himself was situated, within the house of Yahweh. This is where he had his nest. You see? And so the intention was to really clean out the house of Judah. You remember what they say in the I think it's the 83 Psalm, I believe it is. Raise it to the ground. This was their intention. They weren't playing. And my, what a contrast. What they have done to secure their aim and what was their chief intent. Look how they want to change the narrative to make it seem like something else, to make it seem like that their inner intentions were, so it was only a misunderstanding between friends. That's the way they are captioning the matter of 400 years enslavement. It was only a misunderstanding between friends. Nothing to it, while their intent was total and absolute destruction of the house of Yahweh and the house of Israel. That's what the 400-year captivity was about. And never forget the hidden hand of Levi. You see? And therefore, we are called to understand that these people, that these demons, that these hosts of wicked spirit and their chief, Gabriel, the chief rebel, that made up his mind that he wanted no Torah and he wanted nobody to have the mind of Torah, to serve the Most High and Mashiach in the Ruach. This is the quest of their kingdom. Get rid of the Torah. And so is the kingdom order of Esau, all America and England and whatever have you. They don't want nobody who wants to live a clean life, and look at their double standard. How they keep on trying to paint themselves as a people, as a nation of laws and goodwill, with the intent to destroy all peace and order according to the Torah of the Most High. In this time of the sealing, we have now the period where we can examine our scriptures and get a really clean view of the 70 years of captivity under Babylon, and see the tremendous volume of work of our prophets during those periods. It blew your mind. They were doing a whole lot of work to prepare for the coming of the Mashiach, for the massive work he had to accomplish. The tremendous amount of accomplishment that he had to master to achieve the redemption for the house of Yasha'Allah. And if there be anyone else, whomever, but the Mashiach had to take in handling, managing the processes of being the sacrificial lamb. And this was his passion. And so you can imagine how he would have felt when he told his disciples that we're going to go up to Jerusalem and I'm going to be betrayed into the hands of men and crucified and so on. And Kepa said, no, not so, Master. Far be that from you. And the Master says, get thee behind me, Satan. His focus was at such a peak and intensity that he could not tolerate one iota of detraction from his purpose, where he was going, ayaka, what he needed to do. There could be no distraction for him. His mind was set on the stake to be the lamb that takes away the sin of the world. This was his purpose and his mission. And so as we are in this time of the sealing, Yasha'Allah, let's concentrate on the sacrifice of the Mashiach and what he has done to bring us to this place of the sealing. Remember that he is gathering his jewels. And what he's doing with his jewels is reorganizing them, repositioning them. Okay, the reorganization has to do with the fact that the fall brought with it a disintegration of the inner being and life of man and the connection of relationship of man with the Most High. So when their eyes were open, the Ruach left because man had given himself to another ruler. And where we are now is we are at the time of the permanent return of the Ruach. Along the way, since the Mashiach came and did his sacrifice, you've had intermittent periods where brothers and sisters were receiving the gift of the Ruach, but that wasn't the final chapter on the matter. The final chapter is now in the sealing of the 12 tribes, according to the book of Revelation. That when the Ruach comes now, he's coming for permanent residency. So he's pushing out all the dwellers that were in the temple of man's being, his body and his spirit, his whole being. Whatever that was not of the Most High, that has been having habitation of our being, cleaning out, clearing out. And this is what the Mashiach's work was all about. That's why he was so intent. And his direction, his focus was at such a degree of intensity that he could tolerate nothing that would set him off track where he needed to go to secure the salvation of his people. He could tolerate no distraction. This is why he had to rebuke Keppah, his friend Keppah, whom Esau crucified upside down, to show his disdain for the purpose, for the action of the crucifixion. Esau was in such bitter rage that he had this covenant blessing, the promise of this covenant blessing in his grip. So he let loose the fury, the intensity of his wrath upon the Messiah in the crucifixion. Don't give no attention to their portrayal of the little weak, wimpy character they try to show you to hide the horror of Edom's commission of destruction on the Mashiach at the time of the crucifixion. But he would let nothing deter him and turn him back, because he needed to bring you and me to this moment of the sealing time of the tribes, where he makes it possible that the Ruach could return and take residency in our bodies like he had with Adam and Hawa at the beginning, before Hawa let Satan in. This is the blessing and the beauty of the sealing. And this is the time that we are in. And a part of, or added to, our need or added to the provisions to secure the cleansing that we seek, that we must have, is this matter of our personal and interpersonal relationship with each other. As man and his wife, the basic unit of the family, the man and his wife, children does not enter the picture yet. There's the man and his wife. That's the foundation. And later on, the children come. And if there be children, what does the scripture say in the psalm? Train up a child in the way he should go. And when he's old, he would not depart from it. This is the Torah. And so, our concentration now, Yasha'Allah, is to understand that the sealing is taking place, taking effect on our behalf. All this is the work of the Mashiach. All this is what he had to accomplish. All this is what he had to concentrate on. What he could not allow Kepa, his friend, his best friend, Yakataba. He could not allow his best friend Kepa to deter him, to get in the way of his concentration of the goal of salvation. And so you and I, as we concentrate, give our attention to the sealing time, we have to concentrate on all these matters that were before us, you know, in a general way. We have to concentrate on them now with more intensity, with the utmost intensity of our being, to get rid of whatsoever does not please the Most High, please the Mashiach. Whatever would come to disturb our relationship with him and bring hurt to him, we shouldn't allow it. We should be only too eager to let go of anything that would hurt our friend. See what he says in the book of, I think it's Zechariah or somewhere in those books, when they ask, what are these wounds in your hand? And he says, these are what I got in the house of my friends. My friends did this to me because he laid his life down to save us. So we call him Yasha'Allah, to recognize your friend, the Mashiach, whom the Father sent in his name, to lay his life down so that he can bring you to this moment that is called the sealing of the 12 tribes of the house of Yasha'Allah. The sealing to push Satan and the demons out of your body and fill you up with the Ruach. This is the goal. This is what we're after. And so then we looked at the problem that our forefathers had in the escape from the Babylonian captivity. They were beset by problems of the intermarrying that they were commanded not to do. And you know how these women are. In their sinful nature, being pulled here and there to this thing and the other thing. You know how curious women are. And were causing upset for the men who were focused or desiring, striving to be focused on the purpose at hand. That was to secure relationship with the Most High. And with Levi providing the undercurrent of the satanic espionage against the nation, and the women rebelling against the man's leadership, I think you begin to see the picture of the chaos in our relationships that we were in combat with. And so the Mashiach is calling us in Hebrew or Hebrews chapter 12, it reminds or commands us by saying, wherefore, seeing that we also are compassed about with a great cloud of witnesses. I mean, he's reminding us that there has been some brothers and sisters that has gone on before us that had to fight the same fight that we're fighting. And they had to win the battle to be awarded the prize, even though the prize wasn't being, given out yet. but at least the names are on the checklist who are to be awarded the prize. Who's the prize? Mashiach. Mashiach. The prize of eternal life. So their names are on the list already. We want to get our names on the list. So we got to be faithful, Yasha'Allah. Brothers and sisters, be committed to the cause. Let me read you one more time and we're done. Revelation chapter 7. Only a few verses and we're done. Revelation chapter 7. We'll use a few verses. And after this I saw 4 messengers standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another messenger coming up from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living Elohim. And he cried with a loud voice to the four messengers, to whom it was given to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our Elohim upon their foreheads. And I heard the number of them, of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed out of all the tribes of the children of Yasha'Allah. May the Most High bless you, Yasha'Allah. Keep you strong and focused and giving attention to the Torah, to the way forward. What says the scriptures in the Psalms, commandments are a light. There we have it. We have light to show us where we're going. Most High bless you. Until next time, so let it be.